All right. Hi, everyone. This is Sister Elizabeth coming to you from Paris, France, for real. We're at
What?
I am at the Mother House of the Daughters of Charity, the miraculous metal shrine here, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. We're on the Rue de Bac in Paris, France. That's the
This
street
is
we're on, in case you didn't know what the Rue means.
Rue de Bac. That means road,
Yeah,
street.
yeah. Road of Bac, whatever. Yeah.
I
It's
just
really
love this is insider baseball because our mother house is in Paris. So
mhm.
whenever a decision is made or anyone talks about the mother house, often we just say Paris. Did you hear anything from
Right.
Paris? What did Paris
Yeah.
have to say about this?
We're in Paris. And the truth is, when you come, I'm here for a meeting with other seminary directresses and postulant directresses. And so there's about 50, a little over 50 sisters from 28 different countries, which is really interesting. And, you realize once you get here for one of these sessions, they're like 20 days long and they're packed. And you don't really get to see too much of Paris unless you come a day early or stay a day later because you're going all day in meetings. You might have like a 2 hour break at lunch and you can run out real quick to go see something.
Go to the
But
Seine,
otherwise
go
you're
to
basically in the mother house. But to be perfectly honest, when you're in the mother house, you don't really care about being anyplace else. You go to the Chapel of the Miraculous Medal, where St. Catherine Labouré had her apparition of Our Lady, the most intense place on the planet, I think. It's so amazing. The pilgrims who come, the place is packed all day
yes,
long
all
with
day.
people just coming in. And it's not tourists, it's people coming home from work. They're, getting their groceries and coming in and saying prayer before they head home, or they're coming to pray with the sisters in the evening, coming for liturgy. It's really, really amazing.
And
So it's such a
it's not a
privilege to be
big
here.
place. It's
No, no, it's not.
when you
Mm-mm.
think of cathedrals, and if you've been to Paris,
Oh,
there's lots of giant, huge
yeah.
places you could go. But
In some ways, you'd miss it. I mean, if you walked up the Rue de Bac, you didn't know exactly where it was, you could walk right by it, and you might not know that it's here other than reading signs on the wall. But yeah, it's not big, it's not showy, it's not anything like that. But it's absolutely beautiful. We know that. I mean,
mhm,
it's our heart. It's totally our heart. And Vincent's heart is here, of course, and Catherine
yes,
Labouré and Saint Louise de Marillac. Yeah, we're divided, not divided, but there are sisters who are Spanish speaking, sisters who are Portuguese speaking. We have sisters who are speaking Polish, some from Slovakia. Sister from Syria is here. So there's obviously a number of French speaking sisters as well. Again, we're here from 28 different countries from around the world, literally Madagascar, Syria, Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, Indonesia, um, Philippines, India, United
yes.
States, Spain, of course, and yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
The Daughters of
It
Charity
just
community is alive and well.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful because as many times as we say we are one community. One of the reflections today in one of the talks that was given was, when in 1660 Saint Louise died, Father Portail, who was Saint Vincent's right hand person and really helpful with our community, he died, and then in 1660, St. Louise de Marillac died in March, and then in 1660, September, St. Vincent died. And one of the comments he made I thought was just so profound. And then we went to the archives today, and she said this as well, that the company was so well formed and so deliberately formed so that it could go on, right? It didn't depend just on them, but that it would hold its charism and hold the identity, that the daughters who were there, and that when all the leaders, all of the people, the three, died within 9 months of each other, the community did not go into chaos. It
Mm.
continued on, right? To me, that is amazing when you think about it. I mean, yeah, when the leaders go, it's very hard for communities to any institution, it doesn't have to be a religious community or Society of Apostolic Life like ourselves. We, you think you're not going to be able to go on, but our sisters were brave and strong and well formed, and so it's really, really touched my heart in relation to being a seminary directress. I'm
Mm.
always thinking like, what, why, who did this? Like, why would anyone send me here? Um, and I realized just how important it is to care for and tend to the formation of ourselves first, right, and of our sisters. Um, yeah, it's
Yes.
really, really important.
Great succession planning,
Yeah,
thinking ahead and saying, I'm not going to be here all the time, or in the
right,
future, there may
right.
be a time that so and so is not going to be there. How can we prepare for whatever's coming? And there's some humility in that, realizing that
Mhm.
we're not the answer to every, question. We have to
Yeah,
just know that God is in control and that the community belongs to the Lord and that we're
right,
just
right.
stewards of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, and it shows in our ministries as well. I mean, when we're somewhere and we're helping an organization or helping a community or a parish or a neighborhood see what their own poverties are, help them to fill in the gaps that other services aren't providing, and then be able to help them build build their own program, to be able to put together something so that it's not an institution run by us, right?
Mm,
But that it is a work of the neighborhood or work of the church or whatever organization it is, that we're there to help them somehow find ways to alleviate their own poverty. It's not,
mm,
and then we can move on and go to the next place, knowing that we've hopefully, spread good seed, and we're able to move on, trusting that the soil was good and we can move on from there. So, yeah,
yes.
I could go on and on, but we have an amazing episode today with just one of our
Favorite
favorite
people.
sisters, favorite people anywhere, anytime. Yeah.
You guys are going to love this episode with Sister Honora, who is just dropping some great truth bombs and amazing reflections on Easter. I mean, we're still in Easter, it's not over yet. We
No,
are
it's not.
still celebrating and basking in the presence of the risen Christ among us. And yeah, Sister Honora has a lot of beautiful thoughts and stories and just great reflections to share for everybody. And I don't know what you have a whole different experience with Sister Honora that longer than my history with her. And yeah, it's just a great lady.
Yeah, she is. We had another episode with Sister Honora. I wish I could remember exactly when it was. It was probably two seasons ago, anyways. But she talked about working at St. Patrick's, and I think she mentioned it during your interview with her as well. But there, she was talking about her work with women who are homeless and just the amazing spiritual dimension she brings to the work that she does. Really just helping the women find the goodness within themselves. When other people don't see it, she sees it, and she helps them to see it about themselves. And I think that she brings that into this interview as well. She's just always able to see the Lord's work in everything, and just how he guides us to his spirit, how he guides us to the light, how he guides us to those who need us, to
Mm.
be the servants that we're called to be. Um, yeah, so yes, Honora is a very, very special sister. And she is special to many of us
Mm.
for sure,
Yes.
especially our seminary sister, who works with her um,
Yes.
at St. Patrick's Center. So shout out to her, and to all the other
Yes.
seminary sisters who I think I will still be separate from them. Because right now I'm in Paris and they're still in St. Louis. We do a lot together. We're together all the time, but this they could not do.
You're right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so
They're
I will
having a
meet up with
party while
them.
you're gone. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
There's
I
other
don't think
people
so.
helping them.
Well, you never know. I mean, they're with some other sisters who are, you know, who knows what they're doing? They're probably taking full advantage. Um, but I will meet up with them in Emmitsburg, and
And we'll hear about
start our
that next
heritage.
time.
You will hear
Yeah.
about that the next time. Yeah. But for now, we want to hear from Sister Honora and Sister Liz because it was a great
Yes.
interview, and I think you'll all enjoy it a lot.
Yes. So,
So,
as always, keep in
Banu,
touch with us and send us an email, companyofcharity@gmail.com. And did you know we still have a phone number? You can send us a text message or a voice clip. Come on, people. 301-447-0204. We'd love to hear from you. And send this episode to a friend, share the link, share it on social media. It's a great, just a little shot in the arm. Welcome, everyone. You're listening to In the Company of Charity podcast. And today I am in the company of Sister Honora. We're so glad you're on the podcast today. Thank you for saying yes. So, Honora, tell me a little bit about where you are right now and what you're up to, just to get us started.
Okay. Well, here I am sitting in my room with my little desktop computer, and I can't say I'm delighted, but I am grateful to be talking with you, Liz, about the meaning of Easter as we look through the long range of our lives. And I know you especially want to hear from me, but I'd love to make it as mutual as possible. So
Sure. Well, when Sister Elizabeth and I were talking about, we want to have somebody on for Easter, your name came up because number one, you have seen a lot of life, you've been through a lot yourself, and you've helped a lot of people in their life situations, including many sisters. So it made a lot of sense to have you come on and talk about like how to live a resurrected life in Christ. And so I just wanted to say that to start off because it is delightful to have you.
thanks, Liz. Well, you're right. I have a lot of life behind me. I just turned 86, and so I just, first of all, celebrate that God has not given up on me throughout these years. And when I go back to being a kid, Easter was not that big a deal. And me and my sister we got new coats at Christmas time. We had one Easter lily in the house. My dad was a Knight of Columbus. I don't know if you remember those, but anyway, it was a small town with a very Catholic atmosphere, and it was just assumed that you celebrated Easter. So we went to Mass and that Easter week was pretty much over with. We didn't have a long thing, but after I became attracted to being a sister, and that was partly through sodality and all those things that were nourished, I really did become deeply attracted to the idea that God could die for me, for us, and in his rising draw us to some deeper kind of living. And this was, just very, very faintly attracted when I was in high school. But when I went to college, I went to St. Teresa's College in Winona, there was a very deep call. In fact, I can remember, and this was Holy Week that this happened to me. I was thinking very seriously of being a sister at that time. It was night, and I think we just had a meeting over in the quad, and I was coming home by myself, and suddenly, and all this while I was thinking seriously about being a daughter. And as I walked through a kind of a lonely spot, I had this and this never happened to me before or after this, but I had this very, very grave sense of evil. And it wasn't like anything I could see or envision, but it was just an atmosphere of evil. And it felt like a temptation. And I got out of that empty space as quickly as I could and ran to the church. And when I was there, I heard the choir practicing in Latin, "Father, if this cannot be taken from me, then let it be." I remember the first word, pater. And I just felt a very easement of that temptation and a sense of peace that there will be a cost. I guess that's what I sensed. Anyway, it was a very moving part of my first serious Easter. And I remember it only because you invited me to think over the whole gamut of what it has come to mean for me. And then eventually, thanks be to God, it was clear to me that I was being called to become a daughter. And I'll just kind of go through, and maybe you can share something too about early understandings of Easter in our community. I can remember being on the staff of the college teachers, and they were very serious. Very, I came from a church. I mean, from a family where Easter was not much, at least in its preparations, but in the community, as you probably remember, this was heavy-duty stuff. You fasted seriously as a 40-day preparation. And I can remember, when we first were allowed to have Easter candy after Easter, I think I ate my whole bag in one sitting because I was so grateful that Easter brought candy back into my life. But as I then went into my, I would say my first years of being a sister and teaching, that was very much an experience of being in parish life again. And that really was a joy to me. At that time I was teaching kids, high school kids, and to be with young people is always kind of Easterly because they're so impossible to predict, just like Jesus' resurrection was impossible to predict. Do you have anything from your upbringing that that I might have sparked? How was it for you, Easter in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, many people know, maybe not all people know, that my parents were very involved and still are very involved in the charismatic renewal in the church.
Oh.
And so the strongest memories for me were when we would go to Easter Mass at the church, but then later in the afternoon we would go to a big prayer meeting, like a big party celebration. And for those of you familiar with charismatics, it's all about the Holy Spirit and people celebrating and speaking in tongues and praying out loud and just very expressive ways of showing faith. And so for me, those are very strong memories of like praying in the Holy Spirit and the joy of the gospel. I have one memory of my dad even like dancing, to just in prayer and praise. And so, you have your standard like Easter egg hunts and Easter baskets and dinner and those kinds of things. But, regarding the faith aspect, those were really big for me, and to live that
Mm.
life in the spirit, especially, as you look towards Pentecost, that was really something very strong in my upbringing. And then at Mary Washington, which I think you might
Mm-hmm.
remember in college,
Mm-hmm.
we we had the Easter Vigil, where often students would be being baptized or coming into the church, and
Oh.
I was able to sponsor a friend as she came into the church with everything: baptism,
Wow.
confirmation, first communion. And so that was my first exposure to the Easter Vigil Mass, where all the readings and everybody gets excited, and you're up late, and the fire and the darkness in the church, and the light
Mm-hmm.
growing, and the exultet. And actually got to sing the exultet several times, both in Emmitsburg and in St. Louis as a sister. And those are just unforgettable experiences, to be able to really be a part of that, that mass and that celebration. It really deepened um, what it is we're doing when we celebrate those things, and to say, like, no, this didn't happen. I mean, it happened 2000 years ago, but Jesus is, like, we are constantly going through the Paschal mystery in our own lives, and uniting ourselves with that process that Jesus went through. um I think sometimes people think
Mm-hmm.
Catholics are very, like, we're so focused on suffering and the cross, and very Lenten. Um,
Yeah.
but to see that played out in the church, but then also in the community of people, like getting ready for Easter, and cleaning the house, and
Yeah.
getting the decorations ready, and all of those things. It's like you really are entering into the celebration as it's supposed to be. You have the
Yeah.
suffering and the death part, but the resurrection is upon us, and we spend even more time celebrating than we did during Lent. Um,
Yes. You know, Liz, I'm so glad you brought up the early experience of the charismatics, because when I was a young teacher, I was teaching in Chicago at that time. Um, I was very attracted. In fact, a number of us younger sisters were attracted to the charismatic way of praying. And I can remember it was kind of suspect at that time. But we talked to our director, and he said, your lives show that this is not a danger. This is something very beautiful that will help your prayer. And so for a good 6 years, I think, I was very moved and shaped by the charismatic way of praying. And then as I got missioned again, and this is where my real experience of Easter came into play. In fact, a huge part of my life. Um, I have been gifted to experience Easter in a wonderful parish called Holy Spirit. And you probably know everything's up for grabs right now. There's a process in St. Louis that is probably everywhere that they call All Things New. And our parish, which has been so nourishing to me all the way up to uh, Easter time, it's experiencing upheaval, as all parishes are, but in a way that's very much an Easter experience too, because as we know in the Gospels, the upheaval of Jesus being crucified and buried, and all of a sudden the message coming out, oh, he isn't dead, he came, I saw him. That was what you'd call really woke. And so it is for me, even this all things new experience is another way of actually moving into the moment of Easter where it's not all clear, but there's hope that there's something afoot that is new and promising and life-changing and growthful. So on the verge of all this change, not just for the church, but for our whole province, I feel like we're really in an Easter season that's just kind of, there's in the gospel, at least, there are times when nobody knew what was going on. Jesus hadn't really appeared to the whole group of them, and there was a lot of, and even that walk. I love that walk, the Emmaus walk, where the two of them were just so downtrodden, disheartened, and Jesus sneaks up and just gently, quietly leads them to the recognition, especially as they eat bread together, break bread together, that this is a whole new season. I want to pause just for a minute to see if there's any catching up, anything that you remember in the changing of your experience of Easter, first of all, and its understanding.
It's tough to understand without faith the idea that things can be difficult, and going through trials and uncertainty, and wondering what is the answer, or why are things happening. I think everybody has those experiences, even like spoiler alert, if you become a sister, still there are experiences where you have no idea what's going on, what the future holds, how it's all going to shake out. And I think sometimes we forget, and I have forgotten, that what St. Paul tells us, like the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. I just, it's a mind-blowing like scenario to think about, that this Spirit, the Holy Spirit that raised Jesus, like lives inside of us, is guiding us, is with us. And in these times of uncertainty and upheaval, I mean, not just in the church or in dioceses, but in our political system, in our world, in countries, how unstable things seem to be.
Yes.
And so I think it keeps becoming clear to me, and even deeper and deeper as the years go by, like we are living this, but we're not living it without faith. I think we have the benefit, like the two on the road to Emmaus, I mean, they were just crushed.
Yeah.
And maybe obviously they didn't see how the scriptures were pointing to what they were living. But we really have the benefit of all of that, to see with the eyes of faith the things that are happening around us and inside of us, and with the people we love. How can we see things in a new way with a resurrected vision, rather than a Lenten vision without the other half, which is the resurrection and the new life and the deeper life that Jesus is calling us to.
Yeah. I remember that one wonderful story of the disheartened but still kind of hopeful apostles, when all they could think of doing was just, I'm going fishing. I know how to do that. I don't know what's going on here, but it seems like Jesus is not dead, but we haven't seen him. And so they go fishing. And the one line that I just love is when Jesus is calling out from shore, saying, have you found anything? And they have no idea who that is at that point. But then he says this wonderful line that I think is so potential for all of us, especially me, to take to heart. He says, throw your rope on the other side, or throw your net on the other side, and you'll find something. And it just, to me, is one of the most significant symbols of what Easter is all about. Change your mind, get open, look, and you will find what you're looking for. And so that fish fry of John 21 or 20, I guess it is such an important hope for me as our parish and our province and I guess the world at large is struggling to discern meaning in the midst of so much that troubles our whole world and all the times that we watch TV. There's another line that I just come to really treasure for not just Easter, but for all time. Remember when Jesus is saying to Peter, Peter, come on, let's talk. You and I just get off a while and let's see what's going on. And he says, do you love me? And he has to ask it 3 times before Peter realizes that this is not just an affectionate way of saying, this is a chance for me to show that I'm willing to do anything. I'm willing to take any kind of change that comes into my life because I know you will make it meaningful. And then after that is over and he's upset about that, then he says something that is on his mind big, and I think it's probably on my mind and not just me, it's human. He says to Jesus, what about him? What about he's talking about John, and he's trying to make comparisons. He's trying to see, who's more important, who's got better control of the situation. And Jesus just, I can see him smiling. He just says, don't worry about him. You follow me. And that pulling Peter back into his recognition that there is for him a particular intimacy, a particular call to be and to do what Easter is all about. It's been very meaningful to me in the past couple years that you follow me. I don't care whether you're older, I don't care whether somebody else is smarter, but I've got a call and a vocation and a mission for you, and all you got to do is believe that I am risen, I am with you, and I will be the way that you are able to fulfill my call.
I just, we talk about the hope that we have for this podcast is that we reach a lot of young people and people who are discerning. And what a great message that you have for those people through this scripture of Jesus saying, do you love me? And you follow me. For young people who are thinking about their life choices, what a great message to not compare yourself to somebody else, but you keep your eyes on Jesus and everything else will sort of fall into place.
Yeah, that's a great connection that I didn't pull up as I was so deeply involved in my version of you follow me. But for young people, that is a really powerful message because there are in in so many ways, many more, I say, roads, journeys, potentials for young people to follow than it was, when I was younger, and not maybe you so much, but, you could be married, you could be single, you could be a sister or a priest or whatever. But now our world is so much more open to nuances of vocation, and that you follow me is the heart of anything that's worth listening to and attending to. But it does take a very earnest ear. And I really appreciate your connecting that with vocation, whether it be vocation for a religious life or marriage or a single apostolate, that you follow me is the essence of what will mean everything.
I just remember Peter, his story of when he was walking on water, he starts to trip up because he's looking all around instead of, keeping his eyes fixed on Jesus. And here we are again, the same theme when he's having breakfast with Jesus of, like,
Yeah.
don't be looking around all the time and worried about something else or what somebody else is doing and what have you. Like, just keep focused. And yeah, Jesus has a way of, I think, cutting through some of that. And I think when, for those of us who are professionally religious, I think sometimes we need a little bit more of that from Jesus, like, get that ego out of the way, like,
Yeah.
he's cutting through the nonsense and the accoutrement. And so, like, in your experience working with people, like, you've worked with folks who've been through quite a lot in their
Yes.
situation, especially the homeless in recent years. How do you see hope for them? Are they hopeful people, or do you have to kind of find them in it and maybe hopefully inject some joy or meaning or experience for them?
That's a wonderful question. Um, I want to use as my recent experiences the women that I work with, along with Sister Alex, who's in the seminary in St. Patrick's Center. And these are homeless women that are working very hard to try to become unhomeless and to find some meaning in their lives where they can be more directly responsible and in charge of their futures. And what I recognize is, and they come in all stages. Some of them have been coming for a while. Just last Tuesday when we met, there was a young woman who was almost nonverbal. She was there, and I'm sure she was asked to be there by some social worker. But I was so moved by a moment in our, we ask each one to share if they want to, and at first she wasn't sharing, but toward the end of the meeting, it took her a long time, but she would articulate what she hoped for in very tripping words, very half sentences. But the whole group, there were about 9 of us present, and there was very respectful silence as she worked to find a vocabulary. And at the end of the meeting, I always give everybody a personal hug as they leave. I wait outside the door, and I told her, I said, you have a vocabulary that is out of this box today. And I want to say that I see in you an articulate woman who is on her way. And I felt like it was Easter for both of us.
Touching to hear that, because it's not just you helping someone and trying to make them have some kind of joy or meaning in their experience, but you're seeing it, and you're bringing it out of what's already inside of her.
Oh, Liz, thank you. I never put this together until we were talking, but it was an Easter experience. And I'm so grateful for, actually, I didn't feel grateful for this invitation, but I am grateful to you because it's for both of us. I think it helps when you share in talking. that's that's one of the things that really clarifies experience. And I'm so grateful that you pushed me into sharing what Easter is meaning to me. And it didn't dawn on me, but that experience last Tuesday was the beginning of my Easter. And I'm sure there will be more for each and all of us as we move through this season. But you got to kind of talk about it sometimes and watch for it before it clarifies.
Yeah, I have a young man that I'm working with who has what would you say, several addictive behaviors that he's trying to work on. And he was telling me, this is impossible. What you're talking about, this idea that I can do something different, it's not going to last. I can't do it. And I said, could we talk about changing the vocabulary, just like you were saying, like what's the vocabulary we're using, um, to say, like, this is difficult for me, but I'm really going to try.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
it's not impossible. I think
Yeah.
I'm going to make a go of it. I really want to change and I want to try. And so, it's a long process counseling people,
Yeah.
and we know how hard it is for us to change anything,
Yeah.
just you
Yeah.
try on something for Lent and it's just a struggle the entire time.
Yeah.
But to have someone try to say, like, I'm going to say now, instead of it's impossible, I'm going to say this is difficult, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
That's huge.
You know, what's dawning on me right now, and it's a really encouraging insight, is that what we're talking about when we talk about Easter is hope.
Mm.
It's encouragement that the the way forward in every sense of Jesus's encouragement is possible. It's hope. And ironically, when you see it most is when things look down, look bad, look hopeless, and then the Easter miracle of someone who is there, understanding, encouraging, and trustful, and brings me to hope.
That's what we talk about, being evangelized by those we serve, and that's
Yeah.
it right there. Is you know people say that the sister's life is so difficult, and you give up this and that, and there are certain things about that, sure, but the people we work with struggle so much,
Yeah.
and they've been through so much, and the fact that they have any hope is inspirational to us,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that they let us into their situation,
Yeah.
in such a vulnerable and open way. And maybe they do that by choice, or maybe they just are forced to because of where they're at and the fact that they need help. But
Yeah.
it's a gift.
It is. And what you're saying is, for me, another way of interpreting that throw your net on the other side of the boat. Look and see what other people are encouraging you to do by their very fantastical courage. It's like the people who are really hurting and somehow making it even through their horrible time. They are another sign of Easter. When I look at what God is doing in impossible situations, then what am I belly aching about? This is a sign of hope for me to see what other people are going through and how they're getting out of it with the help of Easter.
Well, I think that's a great place to stop. And I know we could really go on another hour, I'm sure, and make it a part 2, but we'll have you on again. You're not getting away from us, Sister Honora. You're not.
I know where to hide.
But I do have to say, often people don't realize the impact that they have on others. But I think I speak for all of us who know you, who've been impacted by your spirit and your encouragement. And the sisters younger than me too, who have had the benefit of interacting with you in many different ways. Like, we are all better for having known you and been in your circle, in your world. So thank you for who you are and your gift you are to the community. Sister, you're the best.
Thank you. You are.